What's up, Laker fans? The Lakers win their sixth straight for the first time in a long time as Dalton Knecht goes crazy and ties an NBA rookie record with 9 threes in just a crazy stretch in that third quarter, going for 21 points. You're listening to the Laker Film Room podcast. I'm Pete, joined by Darius. And the Lakers sit at 10-4, have touched the 700 mark for the first time in over 3 years. Great stat from Jeannie. They just finished a stretch where they've played a bunch of not so great teams or banged up teams, and they won all those games. That's a big accomplishment. It's part of getting to a certain level through the season. But the headline, my man, Dalton Knecht once again sets his career high with 37 points, just an unbelievable molten lava type of stretch. Talk to me, D. What do you see?
I saw a lot of made baskets is what I saw, man. And a lot of excitement. You know how like not every dunk is the same.
Uh-huh.
Not every hot streak's the same. Not every 3-pointer's the same. And there is a feeling that happens. Being someone who's watched a ton of Warriors basketball up here, I am quite familiar with what a barrage of threes and a particular type of three, how it can animate everyone. It animates the bench, it animates the crowd, it animates you on your couch watching at home. And Knecht's had a couple of those stretches, and the stretch last night was an extended one of those. Normally, and we've seen this with LeBron. You remember the one that LeBron had where he ended up, I think it was against the Spurs, the season that they won the title.
Yeah, where they all helped him up on the 4-point play. And there's that, just one of the great Laker photos of the decade of them helping him up. And there's so much joy on everyone's face. Yeah.
And so there's this feeling of, oh my goodness, what am I watching? And some of the shots, they started normal. Like, oh, he's just stepping in to these. The one that killed it was where he caught the ball at the top and then was sort of in no man's land and was isolating a little bit and then took a couple of sidestep dribbles left and then just fired it with the guy right on him. And that one brought the house down. The feeling that you get watching one of those, it's like a dunk contest and a game winner and all of like the highest level of, oh my God, like this is fantastic and amazing to watch. And you're just watching him uncork these threes. There's really like few feelings like it in sports, honestly.
Yeah. No, and there's the next play that like, oh, is he going to do it again, this play? And sometimes the threes get wilder and wilder. That was one thing AD pointed out after the game was they're going to start closing out to you like harder and harder, attack that. And he had got to the free throw line on a play during that stretch where he racked that. But that level of animation is just such a special thing, and that anticipation you have for the next play, D, and is he going to do it again? And there's a certain amount of Dalton can get such a variety of shots off that's why I'm so excited about him as a scorer. Is there are multiple dunks in this game as well from him. Now, that game was interesting in that they played really good defense in the first half. They held Utah to 44 points. There was only a stretch really in that second quarter where it died down a bit, but it was way more serious defense than I expected. Then the second half, they just powered down as they often do. And Dalton's eruption was the thing that gave them life, right? Through some AD got hit in I believe Stu called it a dangerous area.
Yes.
Or I'm sorry, the refs called it a dangerous area and went back to the bench. Lakers weren't playing any defense, went to the locker room. And then just Dalton, they go into a zone, Utah does, and Dalton just starts going crazy.
That's very Klay Thompson-like. And back in the day, like you sort of spoke about Kuz in this way that he sort of reminded you of Klay as well, just with like, there's a fluidness and a shooting. Like,
well, and an off ball, like I know how to get open and get a shot without the ball in my hands. That's actually a fairly rare and useful skill when you have a lot of guys who have the ball in their hands. It's like you add a different dimension to your offense.
Yeah, it's so, look, Dalton's not going to continue to shoot 60, 70, 80% from behind the arc. But I said this either in yesterday's pod or the pod before that, where when you have an NBA level skill and you've had it for a long time, there is, and especially when it's shooting, you have seen defenses react to you in a variety of ways, all because of this singular skill. And so it doesn't surprise me, Pete, when he sees a closeout and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to drive top foot, get to the basket, or pull, or I see the help now, little pull up midi. These are all reads predicated off of him being able to get his shot off. He's also big enough and has a high enough shot release that regular closeouts, and his shooting motion is so fast that regular closeouts don't impact him as much. And so when you talk about the variety of shots he can get off, a lot of that is just size and mechanics, right? And so, and those things are things he's also had his whole life, or basically through college and then into.
Well, not the size. That's part of, he's one of those guys that had this late growth spurt, that he has this fluidity of a smaller player, at least moving off of the ball, but has that size to where he gets elevation and has a high release point. Like you said, these closeouts aren't really bothering him.
Yeah. And so it's also important that we do talk about the fact that you've brought this up a bunch of times, but he runs hard in transition. He got a lob dunk from Austin on a play that wasn't even a transition play, Pete. Like, I want to say Utah had scored previous to that, and Dalton just raced the floor.
Yeah.
They lost him, and Austin saw him, was just like, I'm just going to throw a lob right here, and he got a dunk. I think he had 3 or 4 dunks yesterday.
Yeah.
And so when you're a player that can make 9 threes, but also get 3 dunks, like I think Lauri Markkanen last year, a stat that they highlighted a bunch for him was like, oh, he's one of the few players that had like 100 threes and 100 dunks. I don't know if Dalton's going to get to 100 dunks, but
I think he can.
But I think he can, right? And so this is one of those things where, again, he's got a lot to his offensive package. It's predicated, of course, on his shooting, and defenses react to him in a very specific way. And the Lakers are leveraging that now too. It's great to see him have a fantastic night, and we all were just up in arms, and text started going crazy, and I'm just freaking sending out pictures of Dalton with the Archangel shooting a fire basketball. Like, I love it. I'm sending out memes all day.
It's 2017 all over again. Yeah.
Right. But in the more global sense of the Lakers as a team, Pete, they are seeing what this kid can do, and they are incorporating it into their normal sets. And as we talked about in yesterday's pod, the Lakers are one of those teams that show you the same thing and then do different stuff off of that same thing. And Knecht is such a versatile scorer, but such a heater of a shooter, that idea of building off of these set plays and these base plays and then creating something out of that and using him and his gravity a very specific way in order to open other things up. I see that starting to build now too.
Let's take a break, and I want to talk about what you see there. So what are the implications of this, D? What is this based off of?
I'm actually going to kick this point to you, Pete. Like, you highlighted in your Dalton video the other day that if you haven't gone and watched it yet on YouTube, you put out a great film session on how Dalton's finding his stride, right? And getting into his groove, his rhythm, I think is what you called it. And you highlighted a play where Dalton came off of a down screen from AD, and I think LeBron was in the post. And then it was out of an ATO. And then basically Dalton came off, and there was confusion at the level of the ball. And then AD just went back door and got a lob from LeBron. And
against
so
the Spurs, yeah.
That's the sort of stuff that I'm intrigued by, and the sort of stuff that I'm seeing is that as he's coming off of the ball, people are paying attention to him. And when you're a screener in those actions, it can open you up for all kinds of stuff. And the Lakers are utilizing screens in all of their actions, and not just to get a shooter open, but to get the screener open.
That's absolutely right. And in the case of the 3-man game that you're talking about, that to me is sort of the core concept that you're saying that the Lakers are showing you the same thing, but a bunch of different looks out of it. 3-man game is sort of that core thing. It's 3 guys in the middle of the floor. It could be a horn set, so that player with the ball right in the middle of the floor, the 2 guys on the elbows. We see that a ton, right? Could be I think they call it the post split, but it's with the 2 guard front and then the 1 player in the middle, right? But it's still the same 3 players. They're just in a different order, in different spacing, right? Sometimes you'll have a guy coming off an Iverson cut. There's the stack pick and rolls. That's a 3-man action as well. And so Dalton's ability so the first half of last night's game was a serious basketball game, and the second half was not in a lot of ways. In that first half, Dalton was a meat and potatoes spot up corner 3-point shooter, and he's cutting out of the corner, but he was really that finisher where it's Austin, LeBron, and AD in the middle of the floor. And then in the second half, especially as he gets going or as they get into the bench units, Dalton can move from being just that pure finisher role to being a guy that's in the action in the middle of the floor. And this is part of what I think distinguishes him on offense from Rui a little bit. And so they can have similar levels of efficiency, but Dalton can get higher levels of volume because he's more of a movement type of scorer that you can put in the middle of the action. There are some times where it's like Rui's really good on a ball screen as the role guy, but he's not like a high volume role threat where you can lob to him and things like that. Whereas for example, the exit screen they've been running for Dalton, that's one way he can score. He can score on a back cut if heads get turned. This is part of what I was talking about earlier, D, I was excited to see him play with other players on the floor that defenses really have to worry about, because how often in Dalton's basketball career has it been like, oh, I've got to have my eyes on somebody else on the floor rather than the connect rules that I got to find out which coach it was or who it was in the SEC. But they had specific rules for, we have to guard this guy this way because he's so good at scoring and such a threat that our regular principles that our defense are built around do not work, and we have to adjust. So a guy that is used to having that level of attention now being like the 3rd guy on the floor they're worried about, versus when it's LeBron and AD out there, just there are a lot of threats on the floor.
You talk about volume, and I think it's an important distinction. The last 2 games, Dalton's taken 22 threes. He took 10 against the Pelicans, and he took 12 more last night against the Jazz. And some of that is bad defense. Utah went to a zone. Will Hardy had that great quote.
I was cracking up.
It's such a great quote.
It seemed like everybody in the gym knew that Dalton Knecht was going to shoot the next shot, with the exception of a few people. The problem was that those few people were on our team.
It's such a fantastic, fantastic quote. Getting up 22 threes over a 2-game stretch, it's just like a lot of times you have to work and find avenues in order to get those shots up at all. And after the game, JJ credited D'Lo a fair amount for the work that D'Lo was doing in order to facilitate Dalton getting those shots.
He was phenomenal tonight. I thought, they tried to run that zone and kind of shot them out of it, but that was all D'Lo. Like we had talked, during the free throw, hey, just get to this, and DK is going to be open. D'Lo hit him 2 or 3 times in a row. Bron checked in the game. D'Lo sits the flare screen for him for that. I think that 4th or the 5th one in that run. I don't know what his stats are offensively, but D'Lo was great tonight.
And so we've gone a segment and a half talking about our boy hitting a bunch of shots. Let's transition here, Pete, to like some of the other players. LeBron and AD, I thought were very good. LeBron's turnovers are still a little high, but like you look at their numbers, they've been great. But let's look at a couple of other guys. Like I thought D'Lo had like a high-level role player game in a variety of ways that had nothing to do with his ability to score, because he actually didn't score the ball well at all. But I thought D'Lo was great.
He had a low man rotation where he freaking blocked John Collins at the rim, where I almost fell out of my chair.
The first play of the game. That's literally he just checked in. It was the first possession. He's in the game. It's a defensive possession. He's low man. He rotates over and stones John Collins at the basket, and then gets an assist. Blocks the shot, gets the ball, pushes up court, and then gets an assist. And it's just like, what the hell just happened?
Yep. And that point about looking out to get Dalton the ball, that is something that is a consistent theme with D'Lo, whether it's trying to get Max a back cut so it's like if a player's struggling, hey, I'm going to get you an easy shot. This is like point guard mentality. If a player is on fire, I'm going to get you the ball every time. Like when you and I are on the court together, and this is something that there have been a couple of things that Dalton has said and D'Lo have said in passing, and I think Reddick's alluded to this as well, where it's like there is a certain amount of like, oh, I'm going to make sure you get a lot of shots from D'Lo, that in that period of time where they were running that zone, what they were doing, there was this interplay where Dalton hit threes from at least 3 of them from the same spot, that left wing. And what you want to do is manipulate the top defender in the zone to where he's kind of playing what's that game where keep away, right? Where you got 2 people on each side and there's one person in the middle, and you throw the ball haha, you can't get it type thing, and just make him dance a little bit. And D'Lo's just a master of these type of situations of maneuvering the defense with ball fakes and with, being a threat to shoot himself. And so that level of this guy's on fire, I'm going to make sure I cultivate that. D'Lo, along with just some good defensive plays and then some maddening ones as well.
Sure.
But Austin actually I thought was completely out of control for a lot. Austin, I looked at his box score and I was like, statistically, he had a better game than I remembered him having, because he had a lot of road to nowhere type of drives. But it does speak to a certain level of Austin's at a level where he's I'm a 17-5 guy. And it's I thought he had a bad game.
Austin's very good at basketball. And the improvements that you talked about him making a couple of pods ago and how those have stacked on to themselves. And it's just there's this real tangible improvement across the board with him, that it can look like he's driving into nowhere and throws the ball away. And then it can seem like he's missed 5 straight shots. And then it's a 6-point game. And then Austin just casually pulls up and buries a 3 and pushes it back to 9. And it's just there you are, Austin Reeves. It's it's a 6-point game again. And then he puts his head down and gets to the rim and gets a layup. So I didn't think Austin played a very good game at all. And then you look at his stat line, it's just oh, look at that. You stuffed the stat sheet in a variety of ways. And getting back to D'Lo, the thing about him, that cultivating of teammates, that sort of unselfishness, that is rooted in, to me, or it's the personification of what he's been saying publicly about his role. Right. And you could tell JJ is being very protective of D'Lo and wanting to highlight the things that he's doing, because I think he wants to keep him engaged. And he's been doing this from the very beginning. Remember way back at the beginning of training camp, JJ said, I want you to have a career year. And a career year has little to do with scoring. Mm-hmm. Right. And D'Lo is not having a career year, but the other day, JJ got asked about D'Lo moving to the bench and that change in role. And JJ was very quick to basically say, being a starter and being a reserve to me is not a change in role. He said the role that D'Angelo is playing for us is unchanged, whether he starts or is coming off the bench. We want these specific things from him, and these are the things that he's doing. And then yesterday, in his walk-off at halftime, when he was talking to Mike, you could hear it. Before he actually started his session with Mike, the players are walking behind him, and you could hear JJ say to D'Lo, good job on defense out there. And then I don't know. I haven't spoken with Mike, but then Mike asked JJ, like, hey, D'Lo, he had a low man rotation, he had a steal, this, that, and the other. And then JJ was very quick to highlight that D'Lo's been playing really well and being locked in on doing that sort of stuff for like the last week and a half. And then first question in the post game, they're asking him about Dalton, and he talks about Dalton as he should, but then he highlights D'Lo.
That's right.
Again. And remember all of those stories going back to the time when the Lakers had just traded for D'Lo, and there were like concerns about moving D'Lo to the bench in favor of Dennis Schroeder because they were concerned that they would quote unquote lose him, right? And whether or not that's true or not, it's reflective of a certain amount of like passivity around an idea of what you actually want and your inability then to actually make this thing happen. The one thing I appreciate about JJ is he is going about this in an entirely different way. Not only is he quote unquote demoted him, but he's basically saying all the whole time still, no. Don't look at it like that. Look at it like this. And the things I want from you, keep doing those things and we're going to be good. And D'Lo, to his credit, is seemingly doing that stuff. And so I just wanted to highlight the fact that it's just like, look at D'Lo doing what he's supposed to do. Is it going to come with some maddening things?
Yep.
He went to pass the ball last night, Pete, and threw it right into the backcourt and then had a backcourt violation. It's just like, what the hell happened? But so there's going to be some maddening stuff with him. But as long as he is trying to do the right thing as much as possible and engage the way they want him to be and being in sort of an unselfish and good teammate, it's just like, good, you're being helpful.
And that's, I mean, I would argue that's been D'Lo for a minute now, that if you really pay attention, he does look out, and the statistic about him always being one of our best plus minus guys, and he is our very best plus minus guy this year. It's, I think, reflective of that. And I would argue that that particular attribute, that, hey, I'm going to look out for the people around me, is really important on a team that has a couple of guys, for example, Dalton and Rui, who are finishers, and you want them thinking as weapons, as attackers, right? You want them to put the ball in the hoop. That having a guy next to them like D'Lo really helps facilitate that type of success. And so I really see D'Lo acclimating to a role that I think he's naturally fit for. And there are going to be nights where he's the guy that had the heater that was similar to Dalton. We've seen it. He's done it. And he's going to be the guy closing the game, or he's going to be the guy that has the crowd on their feet. And so it'll make its way back around to D'Lo, but I really respect how he's embraced this roll off of the bench and how he's played even on a night where he'll make a maddening play or he can't hit a shot. That's part of why I think his 3-point percentage is down, is that he's being asked to like be a more well-rounded basketball player. And some nights it's not there, but there are, he's really made strides. And what you said about Redick is a great point. So let's take another break, come back, keep it going.
So zooming out, Pete, half a game out of first place, which is kind of wild to me. 6-game winning streak. Yesterday's pod's like, how good are the Lakers? They've got an upcoming stretch of games. I'm bringing up the schedule now where they just played Utah. Now they've got Orlando, Denver, at Phoenix, at Spurs on a back-to-back, and OKC. If the last 6 games have been unserious games, or against unserious teams or teams that are banged up, the next 5 are against teams that are all playing for something and have plans to be competing into April and May. Proving ground time to a certain extent. We'll get into this more during that stretch of games, but coming off of this stretch and going into this upcoming stretch, where's your head at around the team? And is there any 1 or 2 players that you think, beyond Dalton and the guys that we've hit in this pod, that you think are going to be particularly important during this stretch to sort of show that the Lakers are at the level that you want them to get to?
Yes, Rui. And the next two games against Orlando and Denver are going to challenge the Lakers' physicality. Orlando's a team that there's also, they've had an emergence of Anthony Black in the backcourt, who's a big guard that stacks on to other big guards with Suggs and KCP that go and go and go. The Magic play the Clippers in LA tonight. So they'll be on the second night of a back-to-back when they play the Lakers. But if they win, it'll be a matchup between the two longest winning streaks in the NBA right now. Orlando's won 6 in a row with that going into the Clipper game tonight, as have the Lakers. And so that is going to be a wild swing, D, from playing these games that are, it's like, we can score when we want to. And again, the second half of last night's game was very much a power down, like, we'll score when we need to. And, oh, look, Dalton's going off, so we can play even less defense. And, that's going to happen to a degree, but it's hard to go from playing that type of basketball for at least like 20 minutes of a game to a game against Orlando, where if you play like that, they're going to just beat the crap out of you.
Yeah, and so you said that Rui is a guy that's going to be important to you. How are you envisioning that? Is it just because of the physicality and the size?
Yeah, man, we got no forwards. Half our front court with Rui out, there's no size. Look, Lakers have been cobbling together what they can. There's some AD and 4-guard lineups where the difference between last year and the last couple of years and this year is those 4-guard groups are actually good on offense most of the time, at the very least. So it's like, if you're going to be small, at least be skilled, be able to hit some shots. And so that, along with AD's sort of emergence as a 3-level scorer again, I think diversifies the offense to where at least we can be good on offense. And that theory of like, hey, AD has to have an extra burden on defense during these minutes, yes, but we can still score. But that's going to be tough to get away with against Orlando, against Denver, right? So, especially assuming Jokic is back by then. But where do you see those two games especially? Because those are going to be tough, I think.
So I actually think, I know that I'm sort of going to break my own rule here, because I was leaning more towards role players, but I actually think the Orlando game and the Denver game might be the biggest test for LeBron all season. I know that Paolo's out, but Franz Wagner's a big dude. Jonathan Isaac's a big dude. They've got, Orlando is a very physical team on both sides of the ball, and they can throw size at you. And then we all know that, assuming Jokic is back, but even if he's not, Denver's also got some size and some guys that are just going to be physical and athletic and try to challenge LeBron in ways that I think I'll be interested to see how he meets that physical challenge against teams that are both going to try to stress him out by pressuring him and pressuring the ball, but then also attacking him on the backboards and
right.
Everything else. LeBron's typically responded well to those scenarios. That said, I think those two games are games where you brought up Rui. LeBron's the other side of that physicality coin, right? Where it's just you need those forwards to go out there and make a difference.
But that's part of the argument that I'm making, is that if we just rely on LeBron to be doing that in November of if that's our basis of how we're going to be physical enough around the basket, there's a very good chance we lose those games.
So I'm going to pivot one more time to a role player. Where have you been at with the Cam and Max duo? I thought Cam really showed some things yesterday. He came back from injury. He had missed a couple of games, or had missed a game. And I thought he did well against Markkanen.
Yep.
I thought that he did a good job just as rotating and being active. I also thought Max was very solid defensively again, even if the shot's not there. It's I'm seeing a lot of good stuff from both of those guys as sort of bigger defensive guard / wings that are able to hang athletically in ways against guards and wings where you need that athleticism.
It's funny. I have Cam decently ahead of Max.
At this point. Yes.
In part because I think he fills the biggest need that the Lakers have, where if you have one player on the court that can guard the main guy of the other team, I think that there's enough defense at the other positions, and it slots guys appropriately to the point where it's like Austin is guarding somebody that isn't just going to roast him play after play sometimes, but he's not guarding a guy that's super athletically inappropriate for him to be guarding. And last night, I didn't like Max on defense as much last night, particularly the matchup with Clarkson. Clarkson always goes right at his chest, and those guards who can create on the ball, it's like, if your role is going to be as the defender, that role I was just talking about on the court, you can't be the guy that's the target of the offense, where it's like, oh, the reason what we're doing on this play, it's like, oh, Clarkson put a shoulder right into Max's chest and you're going to get to the rim.
See, I agree with you there. I also thought in those, like, we have no forwards groups, and suddenly Max Christie is on John Collins. Yes. I thought Max battled his ass off.
And he did the same thing against
Collins.
Wemby, right? So I think we're finding more of a defensive role, right? But Cam is a point of attack defender. That's what he does. Go guard that guy. He's way better at that than Max is, I think. JC's not going to do that to Cam.
I'm not disagreeing at all. The reason why I wanted to highlight some of the stuff that Max is doing is because his competitive spirit in these matchups, where I've always thought Max is good at guarding down, like give him like fundamental point guards who aren't like the super strong dude. Like I love Max against like the Fred VanVleets of the world and guys like that, because I think that he's just so fundamentally sound and can be bigger than those guys, and they don't have a lot of like, oh, I'm going to go through you the way that Clarkson can with like a shiftiness, right? But I've been impressed with Max getting down in a stance, fronting the post, challenging jump shots. Like he had a great challenge against Markkanen, I thought, where he got a foul called on him, but Max got the ball first, and then his hand came off of the ball and hit him on the arm. Like there's a certain amount of like, yeah, man, go out there and compete and rebound and try to stand guys up in the post and just be as physical as you can against bigger players. And to me, the fact that he's showing that he can do some of that, like enable switching a little bit more, it like is showing to me that he's got a versatility defensively, where I always looked at him scaling down, but I've been happy with what he's been doing the last few games of scaling up.
Very much so. And that's part of the fun of this portion of the season, right? Is figuring out like, oh, maybe he's not the point of attack defender that we thought, but we could use a guy who can switch. And I think that as the season goes on, one of the stories defensively are going to be the switching lineups that the Lakers can deploy, and then the ones that are kind of full of guys that you don't want to switch with. But if you play them all together and you play a drop, you got a great drop 5 in AD. It's kind of going to what they did last year, but as a secondary pitch. We talked a little before, we were like, should Dalton continue to start? Which I know would have been a hot topic we could have hit in this one. But that's all part of it, right? Is making those calculations, is what can you do on defense with this 5 versus that 5? This was super fun and went by very fast, but we got to wrap up here. Lots of things we didn't get to, but we will be back tomorrow. Talk more Lakers. But until then, you've been listening to the Laker Film Room Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.
James has got it in low to McHale. McHale wants to turn. He's double team. Just pass out in front. Broken up by Worthy. Tip to Magic. Worthy dies on his belly. Magic scores.
There's Magic got it. Magic fires. It's good. They will. Lakers win the game. The Lakers win the game. Rebound of Lonnie. 3 seconds left. Van Exel to win it. It's on the way. Good.
Kobe Bryant, 48 points, 16 rebounds.
Shot with his 8th block shot that ties an NBA Finals record.
A lot of Laker fans sticking around for this.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
in Boston. Of all places.
Are you kidding me?
Kobe, hard to believe.
Are you kidding me? Unreal. Are you kidding me?
Lakers looking to push. Bryant spinning in the lane. Back for Gasol. Pretty pass. And it's back to a 3-point game.
Kobe Bryant picked up by Bell.
There's the move. 2, 1.
Listen. Unbelievable. For the victory. It's over. Shot clock now to 5. Bryant. Yes. And that was a little tap to Alvin Gentry. Add insult to injury, Kobe. I mean, what a shot. I mean, you can't defend that. Are you kidding me?
2.1 seconds remaining. Denver a foul to give. Jokic
Trying to disrupt Rondo. He puts it in. Here's Davis, 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's good! Anthony Davis has won it for the Lakers! James again. Oh, he hits another one. LeBron James putting together a closing quarter against the Nuggets.
This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers conquer the bubble, and banner number 17 will soon hang in the rafters.